Welcome to the Magical Salon, where two regular people, Amanda and James, explore mystical ideas and big questions. From books to pop culture, if it's a doorway to something deeper, we're probably into it. We're not experts, and maybe you aren't either, but that's kind of the point.
I'm Amanda, and I'm joined by
your co-host, James, and I'm a chronicler this week for the record.
Have you ever wondered how to start a magical practice? Wonder no more. Today's episode is all about magic journaling. What is it? And most importantly, why even bother to do it? Today we will be delving into our personal practice of magic journaling, how we approach it, and most importantly, how it helps us in our spiritual practice. So just as sort of a touch point, if you will, a magic journal is for us sort of where you keep everything related to your practice of either magic or spirituality, depending on how you want to approach it. People have different ways of sort of conceptualizing magic journaling, which we will delve into. But just to kind of get us started, what is magic journaling to you?
I like to think of it as just my own personal, in some ways, a repository. So like I kind of consolidate all my notes on meditation or dreams, minor delving into tarot, the tarot deck and stuff. So I'll play like, if I am looking at cards or something, I'll take notes on them or do some studying on them. Or if I'm reading a spiritual book, I'll kind of take notes, write quotes as well. And I also like to draw diagrams and stuff in there too. Sometimes in these books, they have like little charts. I've actually written down a couple of meditations because one of these books I read was about hacking the out-of-body experience or something. And he had some good breath work things in there that I liked. So I wrote those down. So I have different breath counts that I could do for breath work. I also like to kind of record if the meditation, if I do them, like when I did it and what I felt after doing a meditation. So I can kind of look back to see like, does this actually work for me or not?
So are you doing this? Are you writing in your magic journal every day? And also, how long have you kept one?
I'd say no, I don't write it in every day, which is probably bad on my part. I probably should.
Magic journal is a moleskin. It's sort of an oversized moleskin with a soft cover.
You have a moleskin. So what does your magic practice look like? Your magic journaling practice?
I mean, my magic journaling process, so I think I have had it. I don't write in it nearly as regularly as you because I feel like you kind of journal a lot, kind of a wider variety of stuff, which I think is good in your magic journal. But for me, like, because I have other journals as well that I write in. And then, of course, I have like my writing and stuff. So I think my stuff is more scattered in general. But in my magic journal, it's like ceremonies or rituals that I've done. Usually I plan them out. Then I write them into my magic journal, and then as I'm doing them, I might annotate or have notes based on how I adjust it in the moment. And then I also will write down synchronicities in a more sort of typical journal fashion. Like, oh, this happened and it made me think of that. Or like I had some sort of moment where I felt a degree of magic. Like even this morning, I was like sitting here at this kitchen table where we are now. I just noticed like outside, there were like all these tiny little brown birds, like very microscopic brown birds. And I've never like seen that many of them. And they're never like out in the backyard. And I was just thinking to myself, like, that's kind of odd, but it kind of seemed magical. But it in part seems magical because I'm noticing it and thinking about it in a magical context. And I think for me, that's kind of the magic behind magic journaling. It's paying attention helps you see more magic just by paying attention.
Yeah, I think to some extent, yeah, it's about recording things that make you more aware, or it's in some ways a practice in awareness or being present. So I like that. I like that take. I would say, so mine, I was flipping through mine when you were looking at yours. I started one of them, 2025, basically like on January 1st, essentially. And that one I actually finished. So I've now migrated to a second magic journal, bit of a broader scope of things in there. Like I have like random doodles and just like drawings and stuff sometimes that will take up a whole page where it's not really that magical, but sometimes I like to just think, even just drawing and stuff I think is a bit more creative. So I kind of incorporate that into magical, like creativity as spiritual practice. Or on your, I know you like candles, so like do you write in there like this, I'm burning a purple candle because it symbolizes, I don't know, like, is that what you're journaling, or are you just journaling like I burned a candle?
I mean, yeah, I would say that at the beginning of my magic journal, I was like writing down sort of the meaning of the different types of candles, like the colors and the rationale behind the different colors and stuff. So I pretty much just, now that in my mind I have certain associations with certain colors of the candles, then that's what I do. But then I also have like these just sort of plain white candles that I also bought. It's like a candle decorating kit. They're like paint pens and you can decorate the candles. So I've done that for some ceremonies as well. Like in this particular entry, it's like a Friday the 13th entry. And I'm sort of talking about my rationale before the ritual even starts. I'm like talking about decorating for these candles, right? So it's like, here's what I'm thinking I'm going to put on the candles. Then I do like a little visual in my notebook. And then like later when I actually did the ceremony, I think anyway, I actually have photos of the candles that I used. So I kind of like to chronicle the entire thing from beginning to end. But like I said, it changes a lot, which I think also is cool to look back at. It's not just like, oh, I wrote it all down. Here it is in my book. Then when I go to do the ceremony, I must stick to it like religiously. It's not that dogmatic for me. It's more about having an experience. So if I need to stray from my original idea in order to have an experience, I'm happy to do that.
That's interesting. So then from a magical journaling perspective, we've kind of delved a little bit into kind of what we include in our journals. I do think it's important to mention though that it's something that you should just be like kind of having fun with. Like it's not supposed to be like this. I'm not intending for this to be some like Dead Sea Scroll or something that's going to be like unearthed in 5,000 years and they'll be like, oh my God, the relic. Look at how this sacred and profound knowledge has been preserved in this. It's more just for me personally. Like I doubt even if you flip through it, it'd probably be just kind of useless, or not really useless, but because like I take notes on like the chakras, right? When I was kind of learning about those and what do the different chakras mean? What are their associations? They have like all this different stuff I've kind of been chronicling. So it's kind of a reference point for me to even go back to remind myself about some things that I've been reading up on, which is one thing I like about it. Because in some ways, if I've read a bunch of spiritual books, instead of trying to flip through and remember like my favorite one page out of like 100-page book, let's say, I can just look at my notes on the book in here and I've kind of extracted the meat from my perspective, what mattered to me, and I've got it in this one little handy dandy notebook. So I could have excerpts from 30, 40 different books all in one place, and they're the most meaningful to me personally. And I think that's fun. I would also say I include some of the podcast prep in mine as well, especially when we're talking about something or an area that maybe we're not quite as up to date on, or maybe we're interested in it, but I've not really looked into it previously.
Yeah, I mean, I do that as well. Like when I'm reading stuff, I will take notes if I find it relevant. But also sometimes, I haven't done this in a while, but sometimes I'll just know that I want to sort of engage more critically with something magic related. So then I'll get my magic journal out and then I'll basically just find something that's of interest to me. Usually it's like a Wikipedia page, and I'll just go down a rabbit hole and just sort of like journal.
Yeah, I think, again, it's important that it remains fun. I don't know, like I always had negative connotations for like religious ed or Bible study. Not in a way that I view Bible study as like, I said negative connotation, but it was always boring to me, I guess that's what I would say. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It's not like I'm viewing it as like, I have to study this and like take really diligent notes. It's more like I'm going to read it, and then if something's good or I like a line, I'll note it in this book.
I mean, I think that's sort of a narrow-minded way of looking at Bible study, in part because although, well, I've never really been to an official Bible study. I just went to like a bunch of religious ed classes and stuff. But the way that I see other people doing Bible study is they'll like be working through specific parts of the Bible and sort of mulling them over and thinking about them in a deeper way and trying to transfer the knowledge to their everyday lives and like take it forward with them throughout their day. But then, of course, there's also Bible studies where like groups get together. It'll be a group who are focused on a specific part of the Bible, and it's sort of like a book club, but like they'll read it and then discuss it. But I think partly that process, reading, digesting, but ultimately discussing either with yourself or with others, I think that's sort of like an important element of actually trying to put the knowledge into practice.
Which is funny that you mentioned, because you and I have both at various points in our own journals, if you've read something that you really liked or whatever, maybe you wrote down some notes about a book, you'll come to me and be like, okay, I was reading this book, and you'll like have your magic journal open. Not that you're reading from your journal to me, but it's like helping jog your own memory of like, oh, I wanted to talk about this. They were talking about life and death, and they mentioned some other thing, and it kind of got me thinking about this. And then it can kind of spur conversations with ourselves, not necessarily as something I'm like looking back to as gospel truth or anything on my thoughts on it, but it's like, oh, that was an interesting thought, or that book did have an interesting point. One thing I do want to also circle back to is synchronicities. I think those are an underappreciated thing to include in a magic journal. So specifically for like synchronicities, if I see blue jays, my mom was always like, oh, that's your ancestors or whatever. So I'll note down if I see a blue jay and the time. But when you flip through, it's cool because maybe I saw a blue jay like every day one week. I would never have actually noticed or realized that if I weren't writing it down. It would be like, oh, I saw one a couple days ago, but I kind of forgot that I actually saw one the other day too.
I think that is magic. In some ways, choosing to see synchronicities rather than either coincidences or completely unrelated disparate facts. Like those are two sort of opposing ways of looking at the world. And I think I kind of said before, the more you look and chronicle, the more you will see. At least that's been true in my experience.
I agree with that, because it really is just paying awareness to things and recounting them. And then it's also interesting because you kind of know you're directing your own attention instead of just getting sucked from one, like, especially with the social medias and stuff. Like, it's very easy to just open a phone and get blasted with somebody else's thoughts. But it's like, these are my thoughts in this book. And it's like, I intentionally put everything in here. So there's a lot more meaning to me to even just flip through it versus I'm going to just doom scroll Facebook or Twitter.
How would you say that magic journaling differs, or does it differ from the idea of a grimoire?
I kind of think two things about grimoires. Like, it's either like some ancient spell book with like demons and stuff and like how to summon them, and therefore that doesn't give me like, that's not really an exciting idea to me. It's like, I don't want to be messing with that stuff, right? Or dabbling. But then on the other hand, it could just be old religious traditions or ceremonies that could be very personal to like a family or a culture or something. So like I mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's these old texts that are like dug out of some random cave eventually, and it's like, oh my god, there was a whole religion about this god that nobody knew of. And I think that's kind of fascinating. There's a magic and mystery to some of these esoteric spiritual schools and philosophies. The people that are founders of most of these schools are kind of living shrouded in some degree of mystery, and they went to the mountains or the desert, and what did they learn out there? What secrets did they find? I don't know. There's something cool about that, right? I know that's a bit rosy and playful, but I think that's kind of some of it, right? There is play and wonder in like the mythos for most religions, and that kind of adds to it. Not knowing, did Lao Tzu actually exist, or was it multiple people that collated all these different, little chapters together? Did Jesus actually exist? I don't know. None of the people that wrote the Bible ever actually knew him. They wrote it like 2 centuries later or whatever. That's just some of my thoughts on that.
I mean, I would say play is an important element of having a genuine spiritual practice, but I think in terms of my own personal experience with institutional religion, play is not really, not only is it not really encouraged, but it's just not really even seen or deemed as being that important. Like everything's so like serious. But I feel like the thing about like going back to the idea of like the grimoire, it's sort of a recollection of tradition. It's what worked and what didn't work. And thus it's sort of a field guide, and it reminds me a lot of like the Spiderwick Chronicles, and I've always loved field guides. But it also kind of reminds me of like family recipe books, like when people pass those down. And so it's just like here are all the recipes that our family made and loved, and you know, here's the adjustments that I might have made to those recipes, or the changes I might have made, or whatever the case may be. But so there's like an element of history there. And I think just the fact that you go back to it so many times kind of helps it carry additional weight, because it's not just, because I think a typical diary or whatever, you know, you're writing an entry, then you're going to the next page, and at least for me, you pretty much never go back and look at it, because when I used to journal in a Dear Diary sense, it would just be me like complaining about stuff, and thus I never really had an interest in looking at it ever again, because I sort of had a negative thought process while putting it down. But like the magic journal, it's interesting to look back at and go through again, because there's a different sort of approach to it.
I do think there's a distinction, right? Because yeah, like what you're saying, it's not journaling, woe is me, Katie called me fat today at recess. Like, it's not one of those, right? It's today I felt really happy when I was swimming. It reminded me of whatever. I'm just making stuff up. But like, you're trying to focus on positive things that are enlightening to you or satisfying, or you're paying attention to things you want to pay attention to because you think they can help you be better, or you can learn something from them. And just focusing your attention on a positive thing of your day, it's kind of like a gratitude journal instead of like my complaining journal or whatever. It's more than that, but kind of in that line of thinking. Like the magic journal to me is more positive, uplifting, just on the nature of it. And it's usually things I'm interested in or excited to learn about, which I think is also interesting because, I don't know, there's something cool about like having my notebook, like Da Vinci and Edison and them. Like they would all have their super mathy whatever notes and their different drawings for inventions and magical things that they were thinking about, that it's like, oh, this can't happen. But then it's like, oh, well, didn't Da Vinci like draw a tank? Or he had a drawing of a helicopter or something in like 1500. Basically, like he was kind of foreseeing some of these things that were beyond his scope of creating or bringing to light. But at the same time, he was foreseeing something that was going to potentially exist, maybe.
So you don't believe in virtual journals because you're a Luddite?
I don't know where that came from.
So you do believe in virtual journals?
I don't think a magic journal can really be virtual in some ways.
So you don't believe in them?
I just thinking of like the idea of the grimoires first of all, though, before we kind of move into the how to journal, the physicalness of it. Like, I think one thing that's interesting to me about magic journaling, relating it grimoires, has to do with people are kind of weird, right? We like to think we're super rational, but I don't think we always necessarily are. So like, even if it's something like, oh, so-and-so had a surgery coming up, so like I said some prayers for them and then I notated it in my journal, and then like the next day it's like, oh, their surgery was fine. That's a small thing that I would include in there, which on its face is kind of silly, but then it's like, well, maybe there's something to it. Like I took note of it. I was thinking about them, and then I burnt a candle for them, or I poured out a drink or whatever. And then it's like, and because of that, my awareness and my thoughts and intention for that person, I don't know. I think there's something people, not to be like woo woo, but like, there's something, we don't know everything. And you do hear weird stories sometimes where it's like, oh, so-and-so was diagnosed with like stage 7 pancreatic cancer. They just like drank water for 5 days and nights, nothing else, and prayed, and then they were magically healed. Like some random stuff will happen. And obviously I don't have any stories like that of my own, but it's cool to think that you could do your own. Maybe every time you have a sore throat, you drink some type of tea and then you feel better. So that's like your personal magical potion or something.
So you think magic can heal people?
I mean, definitely. Isn't that that like kind of what medicine is? Half of like aloe is a plant. They just kind of like repackage it. Half these medicines, they're just taking extractions from plants.
No, I disagree. So in a sort of historical and traditional sense, yes, using plants is medicine because you're using the fruits of the world to solve the problems of the world, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. And people have done that forever, healers and things of that nature. But most medicine in sort of a pharmaceutical sense does not actually use really any real stuff. Like aloe is, well, it's not a medicine. It's like, is that a thing? Yes. But like, I'm thinking like, if you go to the doctor and you're like, I have X problem, they're going to prescribe you something that's like completely chemically created. Like it's not really made from anything that actually exists, or it's made from other man-made stuff. So like in my mind, there's an argument to be made that
now who's the Luddite? Just want to say that. You sound like you're very against medicine. But one thing I would say, and I get where you're going with it, but this is what I would say from a magic journal perspective. All of these books like plant magic, plant medicine, people like talk about like mushrooms and stuff as if it changed their life, or oh, I did ibogaine and I was a hardcore alcoholic about to die, and then I took this plant and then I've never touched it in 7 years or something. Like you do hear stories about plants, or I made this tincture, like my mom, my aunt's recipe growing up, or her great grandmother. We always, every time we get a bee sting, we mix baking soda and whatever. Like that's the magic, not taking the clinical stuff. This is just my made up concocted nothing. Science would tell me this is stupid and just take medicine that they give me. But the magic is like people find their own ways to kind of make things better or to solve things themselves. And that's what I think is cool about the candle magic or teas and herbal magics and that kind of thing. Even like deodorants, you could have a natural deodorant or a non-natural. Like people make their own soap. Like you could include all of that in there because some people are very magically inclined in like the do-it-yourself, like naturalist kind of way.
In some ways, the fact that we do have modern medicine has dissuaded many people from ever attempting anything on their own. And I think there's kind of a power in like creating potions, but like not even just that. It's like the power of belief, to your point. It's I'm using all these elements in my potion, and each element means something to me personally. And so like, even if I'm not taking the potion, even if I'm making it for someone else, it works because I believe it will work and because each element is doing something specific. And I think like a lot of people are not really willing to do that, or they're not willing to admit that. Like, I mean, did you ever make potions when you were a kid? Because I sure did. Like I was obsessed with potions.
Maybe, but I think I just want to like kind of hit on that. So like the power of belief is important. So to take that a step further, what's more powerful then? When you go to a doctor and they prescribe cyclohistobenzodrine methylate, and it's like, that doesn't mean anything to me. What is that supposed to be helping with? I don't know. I truly have no idea. I've never heard of that. I doubt it exists in the wild. Versus, oh, I'm not feeling well, I'm gonna make something with chamomile, acai, honey, like the honey helps me with this, or oh, chia seeds help with my inflammation and this helps with that. Like you're kind of picking elements you're aware of and you're selecting and organizing the properties to treat your specific issues. So you kind of have an extra level of belief. I've procured this for my very specific needs for this situation versus I don't know what I'm taking. Now I sound like a Luddite again.
But it's also, there's still a power of belief in taking something someone else prescribes or makes for you, because it's no longer belief in self, it's belief in something else.
In science.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, but there's also something to be said, like psychologically, for doing some of these things, because it's kind of like, if you don't know you're dying and then somebody tells you that you're dying, then now you're like in a whole nother frame of mind where like, and I think they've proven like if you don't know, like you can actually live longer because it's like a psychological thing too.
But that kind of goes into the whole, exactly. And that's the magical journal then, by that logic, is also that more important then, right? You could take it two ways. Like if I only focus on negative things that, let's say instead of a magical journal, instead of spiritual things or magical things that excite me or make me happy or give me life, I just have a doomsday journal. You're going to have a completely different outlook if for 1 year you're just chronicling every negative occurrence that has happened to you or every nagging thing that's annoying you. So like, I think there's something to the magic journal. Just, I will say though, going back to the other question you asked about how to do the journal, I personally do think there's something a bit more powerful to it being a physical book versus like a note app. But that's just me. And I know you make fun of me for saying that, but you also keep a physical book. You don't have it in a note app. So
that's not really true though, because I'm a very disorganized person. Like I'm the kind of person that writes notes on envelope. I literally wrote notes as you were talking on the back of this envelope. So really for me, the goal would be to kind of try and put everything I ever produce into one central spot so I can actually find and access all that information. But at the moment, I mean, like I have my magic journal, I have my like just regular journal, but then I also have a bunch of notes on my phone, on my computer, not necessarily about magic stuff, but sometimes, because if I'm like at work and I don't have my magic journal and I want to notate something, then I'll put it in my work notebook or I'll put it on my phone, and then it's no longer in a central spot, but it's still being notated, and there's something to be said for that. So I think really it's about finding whatever method works for you that you can actually keep up with. And I think for a lot of people, doing it electronically will be easiest because you will never not have it.
I agree, and this is one reason why I think there's magic to having the physical copy. But I'm just saying, like, think about it. To what you're saying, the magic journal can be personal, making your own tinctures and stuff, or like, oh, I saw this thing. I just mean, I feel like there's a level of hesitation between like a note app versus just like, are you going to diary? Like think of like a Dear Diary. Are you going to write the same in a notes app that's like connected to the cloud and whatever, where God knows how like hacked that stuff's already been, versus like a notebook that you're just writing into to recap? I feel like there is a difference. And I'm not saying it's very subtle, but again, we're talking about like power of belief and stuff. So it's like, if you're censoring yourself because you're like afraid it's being data logged by ChatGPT or it's hacked or whatever, then are you not losing some of the magic because you're censoring your thoughts at that point?
There's a pitfall to having a physical notebook as well. Namely, it can be lost, destroyed, stolen. I mean, I don't know who would steal it, but well, I mean, for example, like Hemingway wrote like one of his manuscripts and put it in this briefcase, and he was like on the train, and like somebody, I don't think they like meant to steal it. I'm sure they just took it by accident. But anyway, it was gone forever. And then like Kafka, a lot of his work was destroyed. So there are pitfalls to any method that you may use, and you can't really let fear hold you back. You just have to select whatever you think will work best for you.
I mean, I agree. I'm just saying, I think from a human perspective, there's something cool. That's kind of part of the history of these, which is why the idea of a magic journal and a grimoire or a scroll, like popular in like mythology, Library of Alexandria was like burned. A lot of sacred texts have been lost through the years for the exact reasons you're describing, which in some ways makes it a bit cooler in my mind, because it's not just a copy paste, mass produced garbage that you can buy anywhere. In some ways you lose some of the magic to things because you can just instantly replicate it exactly and transfer it everywhere. But no, this is a one of one. I don't have Times New Roman font in this. It's my own handwriting and my own shorthand with my own doodles and my own whatever. There's like an extra layer of the human element that I think you can't really quantify. And it's more the magic of holding, like, oh, you can read the Declaration of Independence online, but it's not the same thing as holding the Declaration of Independence or seeing the actual piece of paper.
So would you let anyone read your magic journal? Or are you weirdly protective of it.
I mean, I think that's kind of why it's cool. From a grimoire perspective, isn't it like you pass it down through your family, like lineage and stuff? This is our family spell book. So there's something cool about that because you have to be initiated almost, which again goes into like the whole secret societies and these esoteric communities. It's the forbidden or the hidden knowledge that, I don't know, like they're trying to like preserve it, but they're also not trying to share it with people that will use it for bad either. Like there's something cool about that. So I wouldn't be against sharing it. The knowledge is too powerful. It's like H.P. Lovecraft. Like if you see the elder gods, then you're overwhelmed and you can't
see
deal
the
with
face of God, you'll be stricken with terror. So if the Magical Salon created a publishing company and published your magic journal, how would you feel about that?
I mean, I think it could be okay. I feel like it could be like the Psychick Bible. That is cool because that's essentially their organization's magic journal. It's just a collection of a bunch of different essays, topics, thoughts, certain magical things like mirrors, cut-ups, or just random things that they have different writers doing. So like from a magical salon perspective, oh, somebody wrote in that was an expert in like dream magic or lucid dreaming or whatever. So, well, obviously I'm gonna like pay attention to what that person thinks on that. And I don't know.
So you're saying we'd have to create a fake version for the public?
No, I'm saying it would be cooler to make it more widespread instead of just 2 people only. The Psychick Bibles was taking input from all of the people that were a part of it. The Topi, the Temple of Psychic Youth.
I think the best books of that nature, they strike a good balance between giving you ideas and suggestions and encouraging you to do your own thing. Because I've read a lot of books where it'll just, this is what I did and this is what you should do too. Or it's just sort of a more dogmatic approach rather than saying, like I've read other books, like Scott Cunningham is very much so like about you just sort of creating whatever works best for you and finding like sort of taking inspiration from what he might be sharing. But I mean, ideally also taking inspiration from other things and then sort of doing your own, making it your own. Because that's really, I think, the true magic of having a personal practice is it's resonating with you and you alone. It doesn't need to make sense to anybody else.
I agree. And that's, I think, a good way of kind of wrapping up in some ways. One thing I wanted to ask you about that was we mentioned how recently we both basically started our personal magic journals roughly a year ago is what it sounded like. Why is that? There's something that spurred you to make one? Were you inspired by something? A movie, a book, a poem, a YouTuber, a TikToker? Like, did you see it somewhere? Why did we start?
I mean, it seems like my recollection serves me right, that I've gotten more into magic and spirituality this year, in part because I've just decided not to really care about some of the other things that kept me from being more into that type of thing in the past. Namely like fear or like worry of what other people would think. Whereas now, anyway, so I've been reading more spirituality and magic based books in general. And basically all of those books advocate for the use of a magic journal and they all sort of conceptualize it differently. But the whole idea was like, just have something. So then I started having one and I've made it my own thing. I've not really seen anyone suggest doing it in the way that I've done it specifically, which is fine and of course the listeners wouldn't need to do it in the way that we've done it, right? Like you can do it however you want. You could add photos, you could add receipts, like truly the sky's the limit.
Yeah, the moral is just start, and there is no right or wrong way. Just start the practice and see if you find reward in it. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. And that I've also been reading a bunch of other different books on magic. We've read some of the same books on that, and they do mention keeping a magic journal and like notating your practice.
Doesn't it kind of just remind you of Jung though? Like the idea of it in some ways is like with a magic journal, you're sort of mining your own mind and thinking of everything that you do and interact as uniquely and potentially interesting and special, and thus your catalog. So it's also giving power to you. And that's also why I've always resonated with magic.
It's also helping you make sense of yourself, which I think...
And the world.
But that's the Jung element, which I do agree with. Like Jung is very much so kind of the idea that you have things influencing your behavior that you're unaware of just because you're ignorant of them, or the society we live in just doesn't value like feelings or like if it can't be quantified, it doesn't exist. But qualifying things, feelings, thoughts, emotions, especially from a human mental perspective, to your point, you're putting it on the page. Okay.
Okay, hit me with Joan.
I'm tiring you. This relates to what you said. Joan Didion. I write entirely to find out what I am thinking, what I am looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. And I think that last line is interesting because you mentioned how one of the reasons you started keeping it was because you stopped being as afraid of what others would think. Because yeah, like journaling, it kind of sounds childish, like magic journaling. But again, that's like your subconscious or like societal conditioning is telling you not to do something. So it's like, are you going to not do it because society, which may or may not be corrupt, says not something?
I mean, that's not even what I was referring to, but that is interesting because I was thinking more like I was afraid of pentagrams. I was afraid of just like magic in general. So it's even just the practice of it, regardless of the journal thing, was scary to me in some ways. Yeah, I feel like Joan is a good example for this. I think she's like the kind of essayist. I mean, I'm not like a Joan Didion expert, but she just kind of like went around and talked to people and wrote about things that other people strayed away from in a lot of ways. So, and I think that's kind of in some ways what magic journaling is. It's like a lot of people are afraid to even think about these things, let alone write them down. But I think, I mean, it helps you know yourself at the end of the day. Like you can't go around being afraid of yourself. It's kind of like I was afraid to make TikToks. Now I have a TikTok account. It's partly just you can do a lot more than you think that you can, but you have to take the first step, which is doing it.
Yeah, when you write it in your notebook the first time, you're like, ugh, I can't do that. Like that's silly. So yeah, magic journaling, that's a little bit about it. Our magical salon recommendation would be just start one for fun. Happy listening.